We got a little while to kill tonight. There's YouTube snapping into form. YouTube is complaining that it can't hear me. I hope that's not the case. Analytics. So if you're watching on YouTube and you can't hear me, well, I guess you wouldn't know. But anyhow, how are you, Kyle? I've been blathering. How are you, my friend?
We're good. We're good. Here down under. As all the
Excellent.
lockdowns ease and people go back to doing things together in person and all the rest. We're good.
Most excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the same thing down here or up here, wherever I am in relation to whoever's viewing. Going and doing some game days down at Gods and Monsters and so on, and other plans. Free RPG Day is coming up soon-ish. Are you doing anything for that? You going to take some copies of Conflict?
Isn't that June? Isn't that June?
Well, I said it's coming up soon-ish, but
Well, I haven't thought about it. I'm hoping that by that stage, because a number of our game stores, all the lockdowns basically ended them. That and a few greedy landlords, the leases coming up for renewal, and they decided to raise the rent. I think like March last year was a bad time to do that, but there's a few guys that didn't really have the foresight. So a number of the places where we had spaces to game in have closed down. There's a few suburban ones left, but there used to be, I think, 3 in the city, and they're closed now. So I'm hoping that some places will open up again.
yeah.
Because a lot of stores have just gone to being warehouses because they couldn't have any customers in person anyway, so they just became warehouses. So maybe they'll set aside a space. I'm hoping that will happen because the demand's slowly going up. People slowly going back to the office in the CBD. Not everyone will, of course, because a lot of people want to work from home, like my wife. They've enjoyed that, not having to do an hour or two of commuting every day. So I don't think it'll go fully back to normal, but I'm hoping it'll go back to normal enough that some game stores with some spaces will reopen and we can go there, because otherwise I don't know if very much will happen on Free RPG Day here.
Yeah.
People haven't been planning things ahead that much, unfortunately, because we couldn't really. I think, I would be fairly confident in planning things now. Like I used to do those geek-togethers where we'd all meet, all gamers I knew and gamers that they knew would all be invited to go down to the pub in the city. I'd be fairly confident at organising one of those, because it's not like we're suddenly going to get 1,000 cases out of nowhere and everything gets shut down again. That's not going to happen. But of course, it's a bit different when you're investing a couple of $100,000 to open a place up. You might be a bit more cautious. So so Free RPG Day. Well, I hope something happens. I don't know if it will, but I hope it does. And if it does, I'll certainly run something. I don't think I would inflict my own game writing on people, but I would just do D&D First Edition and Classic Traveller, because everyone signs up for them, everyone enjoys them, and it's quite common to get a couple of people show up who haven't gamed for 20 or even 30 years. But last time they gamed, that's what they were playing. And but because the game world moved on and played other things, they lost interest. Plus the normal things of growing up and all the rest, and getting a job and wife and a mortgage or a husband and a mortgage and all that. People drift away from it. But then you have these little events, and they pop back up like a meerkat's head popping up. What's game?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I feel you. Like, I mean, I really want Free RPG Day to happen this June. I love it, man. Gods and Monsters, my local shop. We've kind of lucked out a little bit here around the Orlando area in that the 3 or 4 local geek shops, which you would think a city like Orlando would just be gangbusters with game stores and stuff, but it's actually it's a little not quite as big as one might imagine. It's more just down in the suburbs. There's my favorite guys, of course, love them to pieces. Gods and Monsters. That's my favorite local game store. They're not precisely local to me, but I don't mind taking the drive at all because Todd and Anna are awesome people. And I go down there on Free RPG Day and I run, like, it's a mini convention for me, right? You know, I'll do like 3 or 4 games over the course of the day. You know, a big AD&D game with all the Dwarven Forge spread out on the table, a pickup OD&D game, and then, you know, just something kind of off the beaten track a little bit. Like I've done Tales from the Loop a couple of times, just kind of riding that Stranger Things wave that it emulates kind of well. And that's pretty well received. But yeah, I don't know what June's going to be like. I hope it's far enough away that we hit that what do you call it, herd immunity that the media has been harping on about. Like, oh, we got to have herd immunity. So hopefully.
As is traditional for me.
I'll tell you this. Let me just interject. I will run conflict. If I get to go Free RPG Day,
you can, but it's too much of a vanity thing for the for the writer to do that.
Well,
what I'm just doing now, so I've got a local game store called Cardtastic, which by its name you can see it's mostly Magic cards. They do have some RPG stuff, and they do have some free tables. I'm just going to message them now and say, hey guys, were you planning to do something for Free RPG Day in June this year? If not, I'd be happy to try to organise some things. There we go. I'll send them that message.
Excellent.
From Cardtastic, and plan ahead and see what we can get organised. Because that's relatively close, but because it's mostly Magic cards and that, I haven't gone. I had actually been planning to start running things there and try to get local gamers involved, but then everything happened last year, so I didn't end up doing it. But perhaps I'll be able to. Perhaps I'll be able to this year.
Well, I'm definitely, like I said, I got my fingers crossed. I haven't quite been able to go the full bug like you, where, I mean, you're much bolder than me with just the, like, we're having a games day, I'm doing this, and going out and meeting new gamers, just like, boom, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, I don't know, shy.
Well, that was the thing. So I've previously, not every viewer will have heard this story, but I used to run Geek Togethers. Because what I noticed was, like, you get all these game groups that go along, they're a real tight group of 3 to 5 people, and they go along for years, and they're really tight, they have a great campaign, and then somebody changes jobs, somebody moves house, somebody has a baby or something, those 1 or 2 key members of the group go, and the rest kind of fizzle out. And I always thought, well, that's a shame. But the thing is, and then, we don't know any gamers. And, so they end up not gaming for a few years until they just happen to bump into somebody. My reasoning was always, you may not know any other gamers, but someone else in your game group does. Indirectly, heaps. Because in most game groups, you have, say, 5 or 6 people. There's usually one person who's in one other game group or recently left another game group. And there's usually another guy who's in like 3 other game groups or changes game groups every 3 months or something,
right.
And just loves this shit and does it all the time. And, he's 55 years old and he lives alone. He has no wife and children, but he's in 10 different game groups, does magic cards and computer games, and he does everything. So indirectly, you might know 30, 40, 50 different gamers through those people. So my reasoning was, if we just all meet at a pub and invite all the gamers I know and tell them to invite all the gamers they know, we should get a decent number of people. So I just called it a Geek Together, and I did it about once every 3 months on average for a few years. The least people we ever had show up was 8, and the most people we ever had show up was 24.
Wow.
I think it was. And all it was just meeting at the pub. The work for me would consist of writing 2 emails. I'd write one email out to the guy saying, okay, Monday the 3rd, whatever, it will be on at 7 p.m. Let us know if you're planning to come along or bring anyone else. But you don't have to give us notice, you can just show up. And if at least like 4 people replied, I would then go and message the pub. And because it was an Irish pub and it had these little booths, and you could book out a booth because it was an eating place as well. And I would just book out one booth. And I was always told, you should have booked out more so we'd have space. No, I want there to be a crowd. So it's a space for 6 people. If 8 or 10 people are in it, that's good. If 12 people are there, that means that another couple are hanging around having a beer outside, and there's just these 2 guys standing together, so they have to talk to each other. I didn't want everyone evenly spread out and then sitting there and then just looking at their phones. It wasn't so much a thing then, but yeah. And then afterwards I would try to talk to everyone, and then afterwards I'd write a little report saying, just describing the players and making fun of them all, basically, taking the piss. And always, at least one person found a game group and a new game group formed out of that meeting. And that's really what I was after. I wanted to bring gamers together, in that way. And everyone would always email me afterwards, that was great. When's the next one going to be on, Kyle? And I'm like, all I did was write 2 emails. And it's on this mailing list. You can send out an email too saying, guys, I'm going to run one. All I did was write 2 emails and then sit down and have people buy me drinks. Because that was my thing. It's like, hey, I organise it. You buy me a drink. But so many, not many people would just step up and do it. And when I stopped doing it, it stopped happening. I think it's the same for everything, like a guy and a girl like each other, someone has to ask the other one on a date. You sit down at a job interview, either they have to invite you to the job or you have to ask for the job. Someone has to step up and speak and say, okay, and just, and I figured the absolute worst that would happen was that it would just be me and my game group out at the pub one night. That's the absolute worst that will happen. Nobody will come except my game group. I think my game group at least would come.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I mean, the whole matter of getting kind of that kinetic force behind a thing and getting, somebody else to start making the calls as well, I think is
Yeah.
is key.
Well, you will know, but some viewers may not. In physics, there's a concept called friction. Friction is a force stopping things moving against each other, and your force has to overcome it to get that thing moving along. And there's a thing called the coefficient of friction, which is basically a measure of how much friction there is between those two things. And then there's static friction and dynamic friction. So that static friction is the friction you have when it's not moving and you have to get it started. And dynamic friction is the friction when it's moving along. How much friction is there? The coefficient of static friction is always higher than the coefficient of dynamic friction. It's always harder to get things started than to keep them going. That's true in physics, and it's also true in life. It's always harder to get things started than to keep them going. But you don't have to do work to keep it going.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you and I have talked about this offline, but when I was getting the studio space here organized and all, I mean, I think the first day when I really knocked it out, when I was really like, okay, this is a place I can work. I don't have to step over boxes of stuff. I'm not stepping on piles of things and so on. From 0 to that was like 45 minutes of solid work. And that was just being able to step back and go, wow, this is actually a decent little home studio type space to work in.
6 months to do that 45 minutes of work. Yep. 6 months to get moving to do it.
6 months, more like 6 years, dude. I mean, I was just like, and there were external factors going on too, personal things that have nothing to do with gaming or hobbies or anything like that, where it's like,
there always are. Any kind of change in your life, there's always a million other things. That's why renovations, you've got to double the budget. And the time and all the rest. There's always something.
Yeah, and you just it's like, well, it's easier for me to slump down in the chair and watch a YouTube video. That's releasing tension on my back muscles and moving my arms 6 inches and pressing down with my index finger versus standing up, picking up the box, running a blade down the box to break it down, and then going and getting the vacuum cleaner and running it around the floor and putting shit away that hasn't been put away in literally years. Like, and I'm very embarrassed to admit this, but I know there's a lot of people you get caught up like this too. The lull between the highs of hanging out with your friends and having a good time. When you hit those lows, it's like, you just don't want to do anything. You look over at the backpack full of D&D books that's been sitting on the floor for like a year, and you're like, I should pick that up. Yep.
Or the miniatures. I hear that's a problem. If you subscribe to the Kickstarter for the miniatures and you get 1,200 of them, they sit in the box for the next year.
Yeah.
You don't even get them out to look at them, let alone actually paint them.
Yeah. Well, minis addiction is a different story altogether, and it is it's a mighty thing. I have begun to understand why so many fellow geeks are like, no, I don't use minis, and I'll never use minis, and minis. Like, I don't think that they're consciously opposed to the idea of minis. They're consciously opposed to what I'm looking at right now across the room, what's literally in line of sight of me, which is 4 shelves of unpainted miniatures of falling down that rabbit hole. And I get that. I completely get that.
Well, it's just, for me, I mean, I like miniatures, but I'm not a painter. I've never got into it. I'm sure if I had 4 shelves of minis and I started with the top left and worked my way across and then worked my way down, I'm sure by the time I painted the last mini, I would be a pretty good painter. But but I'd have to get started with that. I'd have to ruin a lot of minis to get there.
Yeah.
So,
well,
my reasoning is, if I'm really keen on minis, then I will just buy some pre-painted ones, or I'll buy some ones and one of those guys that paints them for a living. I'll get him to do it, and it might cost me $30 for a mini or something. But rather than spending $300 on minis and then never painting them, I'd rather spend $100 on a few minis that are actually painted.
Sure. The thing with minis that, like, and this is something that like I have pounded on this for the longest time. One, what's good enough for you is good enough for you. I know that's a bit of a tautology, but if it looks good on your table, if you're like, yeah, I put 2 hours into that dragon, enjoy it, love it. If your friends are like, that's pretty cool, take their praise.
Yeah.
Do not, and I say this to you and I say this to anybody listening, do not fucking go out on the internet, stay the hell off of Cool Mini or Not, or commercial websites where they sell these things. Don't go there and look for your miniature, like your model of miniature, okay? You will want to go to the Home Depot and get an industrial bucket of turpentine and throw everything you've painted in there and just chuck all your paints in the trash, okay? Don't worry about what the guy who's put 52 hours into a single 28 millimeters minis look like. If it looks good on your table at arm's length, then you've painted a good mini.
Yeah. Look, this is, you talk about this being for minis, but I think it's a thing for everything, for writing an RPG, for starting a game group, for this fitness nonsense. It's very easy to fall into the trap of letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, or the good enough. Very easy to be, I've had that piece of cheesecake, fuck it, I may as well eat the whole damn thing. Or I can't come, I'm not up to grinding out the heavy weights today, so I just won't do anything. Or I'm a bit shy. Look, I've got a game group and someone's away, it's only 2 players. The third player who's missing is the most active one normally, so it'll be a bit tough. Oh, look, I'll just cancel the game session. Or whatever. I think the most important thing is just to get started and keep going. That's one of my game mottos, is the game must go on. Mm-hmm. Even if just one player shows up, you run the game. You might change some things so that they can handle it by themselves. Don't be mean about it. But the game must go on. You always run that game. You make it happen. And momentum is more important than perfection. Just keep doing it, keep moving forward.
And that's
and don't be shy.
That's the philosophy, the whole like Crazy Gibberish show. I've said this time and time and time and time again. If one person is sitting out there watching us stream, if one person's doing it, then it's worth doing. Yeah. If there's somebody out there, they've been in lockdown for over a year now. Maybe they're in a state where perhaps their governor's a little bit more, tightly controlling of things and they can't go out and game, or, they just don't want to. It's, for whatever reason. If I'm getting to that one person, then I'll keep doing this. Whether I have 1,000 people watching a live stream we're doing, or one person watching a live stream I'm doing.
Yeah, the same applies for everything. It's so there's a trainer called Zach Evanish, and he had organised his first powerlifting seminar with, I think, Jim Wendler, who's a big powerlifting guy. And he was really excited. Brought in this well-known name, charged people all this money for it, and even if not a stack of people come, it'll be good publicity. I can put the videos up later, it'll be good publicity and all the rest. And one guy had signed up a week before. Mm-hmm. One guy. And Zach Evanish was saying to Jim Wendler, "Oh, man, I don't know, should we should he run it? Is it really worth it just for one guy? Oh, this is terrible. This is shit. And Wengler said, no, man, we run it. I've already booked my flight. I've already got my hotel. We will run it. If there's one guy, he is going to have the best damn powerlifting seminar anyone has ever had. Because he'll have the two of us, and he'll have a fantastic time, and he'll go and tell everyone. Plus, we owe it to him. If he's put his money up there, if he's willing to show up, if he's making the effort, we owe it to him to be there. And I'm the same. I took that to heart. I'm the same with the gym. If one person is a member of my gym, I will keep opening it for that one person. I'd rather have 50 people, but if one person is there, I will open it for them and just go. The game must go on.
Damn right.
And I think it's the same true for so many things in life. Get started, keep moving. Go ahead, write that email to your local game group. That's everyone's task of the day. Write the email to your friendly local gaming store, asking them what's happening for free RPG Day. Just write an email, ask them what's happening. Offering to run a game yourself.
Yeah, damn right. Damn right. And I didn't get it when I was a kid and I read it, but I read it, I understood the humor behind it. But now as an adult in times like these, I absolutely understand the philosophy behind it. When I was a little kid, and I would read Reader's Digest, the little funny anecdotes in Reader's Digest. I read one that was sent in by a woman who went to an education conference in a really small town in Maine, and it was in October, and they had an unprecedented spate of lousy weather for that early in the year, but she went, and it was literally like a wooden schoolhouse. It wasn't one room, but it was like 3 or 4 room wooden schoolhouse, and one person was there at the conference with her. And she went in and she said, no, I'm just going to do it. And she set up everything, and she went through her entire spiel. At the time it was actual slides and an easel and going through, and she did everything. She thanked her audience, packed up her stuff, started shuffling back towards the door, and the guy sitting there said, wait, where are you going? And she said, well, I just had the one presentation. And he said, I'm the other speaker at the conference. So God bless him. He got up and did his I can only presume he got up and did his spiel for her too. But that the lesson is, even if it's one person, so even if you're just one person out there, like Kyle said, that's your homework. I've been telling people from day one, don't sit at home shut up by yourself by circumstances that have arisen because of Andromeda strain, and think, I can't game anymore. I can't reach out to people. I can't have social times anymore. Yes, gaming online is not as much fun as gaming in person. But all this shit that I've got here, the boom mic, the 2 cameras, the studio lights, the pivot arm for my camera, the multiple computers, you don't need this. You need a mobile phone.
Yep. I've done it on this.
Right there. That's it, folks. That's what you need. Don't sit at home thinking, I can't find a big enough group to game with. I don't have the technology.
You told me about someone ringing up Gygax in like 1979 or something,
yeah,
and gaming for 12 hours over the telephone.
Yep.
And that boys and girls, for the younger ones, that would have been the old rotary dial one.
Yes,
with
indeed.
With a handset. No video, no ability to share screens to sharing maps or anything like that. There's just a voice over the phone. Mm-hmm. And they managed it. It's not ideal, but they managed it.
And if they can do it back in 1976, 77, there's no excuse to not do it.
Yeah. So that's your homework, boys and girls. Write to your friendly local gaming store and ask them if they have anything planned for free RPG Day, and offer to run a game.
Damn right, wherever you are.
D&D or Traveller or Toon, or please not a story game, but if you have to, or even a story game, run something. Step up and contribute. and you'll find that you are paid back many times over. Paid back many times.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing, like, I try not to fall into the geek social fallacy of, because myself and persons A, B, and C all do a thing at a table together, that we're going to be best buddies forever, and just, it's going to be like the the kids and strangers things, and now we're pals for life. But I'd be willing to bet that everybody out there has a friend who, if you don't have a group, has a friend who, thanks to the absolute kinetic energy behind it, is at least in an ancillary way knows about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Maybe they're shut up in their house too. Maybe maybe they've always wanted to play, and they're like, man, I wish Kyle would ask me to play that D&D game. I just don't know how to approach him, though, man. I just,
Well, sometimes people are embarrassed too.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are embarrassed. Yeah. So there's this guy, Aaron. He's a brother to me, right? Brothers from a different mother.
Right.
Anyway, I first met him many years ago when my wife was at university. She had this Japanese Aussie friend, and every month he'd have a barbecue. And basically everyone he had met over the last month or so, he'd invite to the barbecue. New people that he'd met in classes and stuff. And my wife knew him well, and we went along one time, and I thought, why am I going to a barbecue with my wife's uni friends? Like, what do I care about this? What's the interest in this? But anyway, I went along, and I ate meat, and I drank beer. So that was good. Now, I talked to a few people, and then there was this East European guy that reminded me of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like big stocky guy with a broad face, a gap tooth in the mouth, in the front of the mouth and stuff. Funny East European accent. They all sound the same to me. And it was just at the end, and everything was packing up, and we introduced ourselves to each other, and he said, "What do you do?" And at the time, I was chefing. This is before I was a trainer. And what do you do? Oh, well, I'm studying. He said, "Okay, and what are your hobbies?" And he said, "Karate or some shit, I can't remember." And I said, "Well, I play Dungeons and Dragons." And he got this look on his face, like, you're throwing a life vest to a drowning man. It was like, oh, he said, I have to get your number. I used to do that. I haven't done it for years. And I remember asking him afterwards, why didn't you mention that as one of your hobbies? And he's like, because, so many times I meet people and they're like, what's that? And they think I'm a geek and everything, and I was embarrassed. And me, I give zero fucks. Like, I just met this guy. If he doesn't like me, I'm never going to meet him again unless I want to. So if he thinks I'm an idiot, it doesn't matter. Random person that I met for 2 minutes at a barbecue once and never met again thinks I'm an idiot. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not going to take anything away from my life. Yeah. So, yes, I played D&D. Got together, we gamed together, we became good friends. He was one of the groomsmen at my wedding. He still comes to this gym. We still game together sometimes, and long-term friends. To me, you say you talk about the gaming, geek social fallacies, and that. I think I distinguish between acquaintances and friends. An acquaintance is someone you just do one thing with. You just game with them. You just go to the gym with them. You just work with them. Whatever. You just do one thing with them. You take away that one common activity and there's no more relationship. It's like when you finish at a workplace, I've got to do lunch sometime. You're never going to see that person again, because you take away the work and you've got nothing. But if you do different things together, if you game together and you have dinner together and you watch action movies together and you have hearts, giving each other marriage advice or something, I don't know. But if you do multiple things together, then that becomes a full friendship, because it's more, there's more to it than just that one activity. So, if you do want the guys in your game group to become true friends, do some other stuff with them. I was in a game group once. This guy, Mark, he had every fourth session, so once a month, would be something different. You'd watch a movie, you'd go to the movies together, or someone would run a different game. Someone else would run a game, one-off, or you'd play a board game, or go to a concert, or something different. And that was a very good thing. It really brought the game group together. And it also gave an opportunity for people to do one-offs. If people were a bit tired of playing the same game all the time, it freshened things up. And it meant even the people who were really loving the game, they had a little bit less of it than they wanted to. So it made them extra keen in the following week to show up and be gaming. So it was a very good and very smart thing.
Yeah.
So, if you do want the gamers in your group to become your friends, do multiple things with them and talk to them outside the game session. But if you don't, it doesn't matter. You have lots of acquaintances in our lives, and we can have good relationships with them and have good times with them, so that doesn't matter. But, don't be scared to make them your acquaintances, and tell everyone you know that you're a gamer. No nerd shame. Wear your D&D t-shirt or your D20 t-shirt or whatever. Go ahead, just let the world know. It's I'm reminded when I was a kid, my mum was her best friend was this guy who was a homosexual, and this was like 1970s, 1980 or whatever. So nowadays nobody cares. But that was a pretty big deal then. In a few states in Australia, buggery was still a criminal offence.
Right.
It was hardly ever prosecuted, but it was still on the books, and so it wasn't socially acceptable to be gay. But his thing was that he said whenever he met somebody very early on, he would tell them that he was gay. He said, because they're going to find out eventually, and if they're going to reject me for such a stupid, trivial reason, then I'd rather they rejected me early on when I don't know them and don't care about them than later on when I do. Now, obviously, being a gamer is not quite like being gay. We haven't had that systemic, I don't want to say oppression, but persecution and all the rest. We haven't suffered quite the same thing. And nonetheless, it's the same principle. It's just a matter of degree. If you have something that you're somewhat embarrassed about, some part of your background or your interest that you're embarrassed about, go out there, tell the world what the hell, and then you will only become friends with people who don't care or who share your perversion of being a gamer. So don't be shy. Go ahead. Make things happen.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I worked with a guy, and this is years ago. I'll spare you a whole lot of interpersonal drama, but like for the longest time, like right out of the box, I mean, he was a cool guy to hang around with, I guess at the time. We had a lot of commonalities we shared. He seemed like a pretty decent dude. But before I even ever brought it up, like the one, like, for him, like D&D was like just completely like, what the hell kind of whack job BS is this? Like role-playing gamers are like damaged people, like it's too weird for him and that sort of thing. So like it never came up again, and then I used to like, once I got settled here in the house and I could basically have a geek fortress, my man cave of solitude, I would just mercilessly kid the guy because I was in my 40s at that point and just gave zero fucks, as you say, and I was just like, Steve, dude, you're gonna wind up playing D&D. You're gonna wind up playing D&D. You're going to wind up playing D. You're gonna want, and he wound up playing D&D. He played D&D with us a lot. I gave him a player's handbook and some dice, and so on and etc. Now, what happened with Steve and I is best left in the past. But no, I mean, he was a guy who started out with his heels dug in, vehement, like, absolutely alpha dude bro. No, I don't do that nerd shit. What are you talking? This was a guy, though, that would, like, while he was at work, he was an like an AV security guy that would, like, basically sit at a bank of monitors and make sure that, like, nobody was breaking into service entrances and stuff in the hotel he worked at. And, like, before the Dungeons and Dragons subject ever came up, we're talking about Diablo, the video game, the first one. It was that long ago. And, like, his thing on 8 and 9 hour shifts sitting down there in this little security bunker underneath the hotel was playing and beating Diablo on different difficulty levels. And that was that was like a point of razzing him after the fact. I was like, you know, yeah, you were Mr. Cool Dude, Mr., you know, spend a weekend at Daytona Beach getting blitzed out of your mind. No, hell no Dungeons and Dragons stuff for me. But Doom and Diablo 2, those aren't nerdy at all, Steve. Yeah. So. Anyhow.
Well, yeah, that's the advice I used to give, that, you know, if you're looking for gamers, look in related hobbies as well, because the sort of people who play board games, the sort of people who play Diablo and all the rest, may also be interested in playing D&D or Traveller or whatever you're into.
Yeah.
So that's not so much a thing nowadays that you have to say, because there seems to be a lot more overlap nowadays. You know, with all the various Facebook groups and all the rest, there seems to be a lot more overlap of people willing to venture outside their little narrow niche hobby into some related stuff. They're at least aware of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So we don't have to proselytize as much as we used to.
Right. It's kind of like in the 1970s when all the hippie burnouts from the 60s, like, got into Christianity. Like, you didn't really have to go around knocking on doors. It's like, yeah, brother, Jesus is just all right with me, which is fine. That's all well and good. But yeah, you know, it was on a popular uptick, and gaming is on a popular uptick. And I mean, you know, I think we've talked about this, and if we have, say so, because, you know, it's Swiss cheese brain. But keeping track of, like, mentions in media of role-playing games, of Dungeons and Dragons specifically, like, the first solid mention I can find anywhere in anything is in the movie Taps. Tom Cruise's character is it's a movie about kids who go crazy and take over a military academy. Tom Cruise's character is walking through the halls, and a cadet stops him and says, "Hey, you playing Dungeons and Dragons tonight?" He's like, "Nah, I got to study for finals," you know. But it's not, you know, he's not like some Poindexter with his pants up to his shins and, you know, nerd glasses and acne big enough that NASA wants to explore the pimples for signs of life. You know, just a passing mention of it in a completely neutral way. But now it's like, oh my God, Joe Manganiello and Kevin Smith and Paul Rudd are all going to play Dungeons and Dragons on Twitch. Let's go watch that. I'm like, you know, you could actually play it yourself, right?
I think it was a big turning point when Vin Diesel talked about playing D&D.
Yeah, yeah. I had a friend who was
apparently on the set of the really awful Pitch Black one or Riddick or whatever, where there's the necromongers and stuff. Apparently that was half his script. That's why it's so incredibly geeky. And he had Judi Dench. Dame Judi Dench was in that. God knows what she was doing in that. But in an interview, he said he sat down with Judi Dench and a few others. Fair enough. He sat down with Judi Dench and a few others and played D&D. And that's just like Vin Diesel sitting there, probably with his goggles up on his forehead.
The silver contacts in.
With Dame Judi Dench.
So,
yes.
I have to tell... All right. I want to preface what I'm about to say with the standard disclaimer. I hate alpha geeking. I hate when you are hanging around with your friends, say you're at a con or a comic store or on the street corner in a restaurant, wherever, and you say, like Kyle, you say to me, yeah, Bill, I met Stan Lee. Stan Lee was at a comic book shop when I was a kid down here. Like, oh, that's very cool. And the alpha geek pops in and says, yeah, well, I gave my artwork to Jack Kirby, and he gave me a free lesson. It's like, yeah, I met Gary Gygax. I hung around with Gary Gygax. Well, I met Steve Jackson and Dave Arneson and submitted a game design to.
Same in the fitness world, man.
Do what?
It's the same in the fitness world.
Yeah. So what I'm about to say is not me alpha geeking, I swear to God, because first of all, it doesn't even involve me. So this is a no shit there he was story. A friend of mine used to be in the digital effects industry in Hollywood, and he got to be friends with Vin Diesel. They actually sat down at a get together and did nothing for 2 hours but geek out about historical wargaming and playing D&D. That was it. And they got to the point, like, so it was my understanding from Greg that like if you and I were in California and I worked in an effects company and you worked for a production company and we said, gosh, it would be nice to make a Fawford and Grey Mouser movie, that anybody who overheard that would immediately blow up to Fawford and Grey Mouser movie is in pre-production. There are a bazillion ideas in pre-production in Hollywood that will never get made. But they sat and talked about properties that they would like to get, like geek properties. And the Fritz Leiber works were one of the things. Vin Diesel is the biggest dork when it comes to fantasy role-playing. I mean, by all accounts, exceptionally cool and laid-back guy. They actually got close to, they made calls, they sent paperwork out, and talked to Steve Jackson Games about doing a Car Wars movie, and then that terrible remake of Death Race 2000 came out, and all it takes is one shitfest like that to ruin an entire genre of movies. A movie like that comes out and tanks, and nobody's gonna touch that genre for decades. So that's my little 5 degrees of separation from Vin Diesel story that I can tell.
Well, at least I can't help but geek the only game designer of that anyone's heard of that I've met is Raven C.S. McCracken.
God, Raven McCracken. I friended him for one day on Facebook, and the shit that like popped up in my feed, I was like, yeah. I wanted to have a priest come and bless my computer.
Everyone can blame Bill for that because so I was going to Seattle for a strength thing, barbell thing, and Bill said, while you're in Seattle, you should look up Raven C.S. McCracken, World of Cinnabar. And I did, and I contacted him, and we met, and we spent most of the day together. And he is as crazy as a 2-bob watch, and it was great. What I think, World of Cinnabar is a complete clusterfuck of a game, a complete mess. But it's written with huge enthusiasm. And I think yeah, I use it as an example to people that the gaming is like sex. Enthusiasm is more important than skill. And as somebody else commented, and it's more fun with more than just yourself. But but the group can get too large. But yeah, people remember games like Fighting Fantasy and Cinnabar and early D&D and so on, because even if they're not that well written, even if they're a bit crazy and that, there's a lot of enthusiasm there. The writer is obviously thoroughly enjoying themselves. And so that's the advice I give to people, you know, that if you've got some game or idea that you want to write about, go ahead and do it. Just put your heart into it. Don't worry about if it's perfect or polished or whatever. That's what you have professional copy editors for.
Yep.
Just go ahead and do it. You know, if you think that, you know, you're not the best game master or the best player, just step on up and do it, because you know, people will be pretty forgiving. If there's plenty of enthusiasm in what you're doing, people will be pretty forgiving of the skill level in it. And you might turn out to be better than you thought you were, as a game master, as a player, as a writer, or whatever, or as a live stream podcaster. So yeah, just step on up, give it a go.
Hell yeah.
I guess that's the theme of today's talk. Step on up, give it a go.
I mean, look, 12-year-old me had the guts to send an absolute insane, like something that would make Cinnabar look as stable as a table adventure module to TSR. Okay. And then 30-year-old me had the guts to send an email to Gary Gygax and say, I want to talk to you on the phone. And then when he started talking about doing his projects for Trollord Games, I said, I want to write for you. And that, you know, people are like all the time like, oh man, how did you get to meet and work with Gary Gygax? I fucking asked him. You know, I Spielberged my way in. You know, Steven, the story about Steven Spielberg just walking onto the Paramount lot, finding an empty office, and walking in like he was supposed to be there and be occupying that office. You know, that's how I did it. And my God, if I can do that, not you, Kyle, well, maybe you, and anyone can arrange a games day. Take that idea that they've had in their head and turn it into a printed, published product. I mean, the guys that did Osric blew open the ass end of AD&D. If you think your house rules for AD&D or your adventure for AD&D is something that people would pay money for, or even if you just want to see it out there and people playing it, there's no excuse not to do it.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, it's so easy. It's not like, you know, back in the 70s when they had to print everything out, and there's Mark Miller doing some sort of strange word processor thing where he has to type up the whole page and then it prints, so he doesn't see it completed. And, you know, they're manually putting staples in each book, folding it over and putting staples in, having to paste the cover onto the box and all that sort of. It's not like that nowadays. You can, you know, you could write something up today. If you can write enough pages today, you can write something up and have it printed on Lulu and sent to you, and it'll arrive within a week. You can get 100 copies if you want, and they'll only cost you $3 or $5 or something. Yeah, exactly. It's not that hard these days to get the stuff out there. It's very hard to stand out, but of course it's always been hard to stand out. You know, I remember at uni somebody saying to me, you know, why is it that, I think it was the 19th century she was talking about, or the Romantic period or something, why is it they had so many great poets and nowadays not so many? And I said, well, I'm sure there were millions of shit poets, but nobody bothered reprinting their work.
Right.
The ones that get printed again 100 years later are the ones who are really awesome. There's a big survivorship bias. That survivorship bias, that can lead us to think, there's no way I could ever match that. Probably there isn't, but it doesn't matter. There were lots. I mean, when I went into the city with my son the other day, there's a little area called Gordon Square. And there's two Gordons in it. There's General Gordon, who was the one at Khartoum and got overwhelmed by the dervishes. And then there was another guy called Gordon who was a poet, who I had never heard of. Then in 1880, when he had died in 1874 or whatever, somebody decided that he was a really important poet, and it said something about, he told the story of the colony of Victoria then. Because we weren't in Australia until 1901. But he told the story of the colony, erected by a grateful people. And nobody reads the guy now. Nobody's heard of him. But he was important enough that somebody made a statue of him at the time. And so don't let that survivorship bias put you off. There were zillions of games produced that did really well at the time, and they're now forgotten. And then others that are remembered for ages. Don't use the best ones that last decades, or the best writing, or other products that last 100 years. Don't use that as your yardstick. That's just an impossibly high standard to reach. Think more of the ones that got out there and sold a few thousand copies, kept dinner on the table for someone for a year or two, and then he went on to some other career. I was looking up the authors of Aftermath the other day and seeing if they'd written anything else. And I couldn't find any trace of them on the internet.
Yeah.
But it was a popular game in its day. Lots of people bought it, lots of people played it, had lots of fun. So it's like I was having this conversation with my wife last night, talking about the lifters, because I watched a couple of episodes of that telly show Kingdom about the MMA gym, and they're talking about some guy. We can't bring that guy back because he's a diva. Divas suck the air out of your gym, and then they leave you. And that's the thing about talented athletes. It'll come back to gaming, don't worry. That's the thing about talented athletes. They tend to be divas in that they don't want to pay, they want all the best gear, they want all your attention as a coach, but they don't give anything back. They never bring any other members to the gym. They don't help coach people or anything like that. They're just totally self-absorbed, which you probably have to be to achieve that level of success. The bread and butter of a gym is just the ordinary member that, because they, at one point the owner's like disparaging, going, it's crowded now. You've got all these new members. He says to his girlfriend, who's the business manager, you've got all these new members, but they're putting off my pros. And she said, well, half your pros don't pay. And lawyer McFat over there, as you called him, he paid for that bag that he's punching. So the bread and butter will just be the ordinary people. Likewise, the bread and butter of most people's gaming will be games that nobody will hear about in 10 or 20 years. Like, who plays D&D 2nd edition anymore?
Yeah.
Number of people play 3.5. Nobody plays D&D 4th edition anymore. They either play 1st edition or they play 5th edition. They either play the first one or the last one. And when 5th edition gets supplanted by a 6th edition, nobody will play 5th anymore. They'll play the 6th. That's just the way that it is. And that's the different editions of D&D are a great example of gaming generally. Most games will be played by a bunch of people for a few years and then forgotten. That's all right. That's all right. You help a lot of people have fun. Just like the geek-togethers. You get a bunch of people together to talk about gaming. Or the free RPG day. The guy comes who hasn't gamed in 20 years and he goes away and you ask him to game again and he doesn't. But at least he had one good game day. You just keep plugging away, inviting people to your game sessions, writing up game material, hanging out at your friendly local gaming store. Keep plugging away, step on up and make things happen.
Damn right. Damn right.
I'll never be famous, but that's all right.
Or you might be, you know? Maybe you'll catch ball of lightning one day.
Probably not.
Well,
But by doing the gaming, you'll enrich your own life. You'll meet a lot of interesting and different kinds of people from all walks of life. And you'll help some people have a better day and maybe help them get together with other people who end up becoming their good friends. You'll bring people together and you'll help them have a better day. Yep. You know, that's why I'm fully on board with Bill's live stream here, because it helps bring people together and it helps people have a better day. Encourage them to do that.
That's why I do it, dude. That right there is why I do it.
Yeah, and in the Jewish world, that's what we call a mensch. Mensch, a good man who, or woman, I guess, who contributes to other people's lives, helps make other people's lives better in some way. And it doesn't have to be a big dramatic way. But just, gaming's a nice, humble way. Social way to be creative with friends and to make some new friends or acquaintances and get together.
Right on, man. So that's the order for the day. As we close out this Wastrel Wednesday, be a mensch.
Step on up.
Yep, step on up. One thing I will say just before we wrap up, and I was talking to Kyle about this earlier, a regular guest on our show, who, heck, he's almost a co-host himself, is Dungeons & Dragons pioneer artist and occasional writer and contributor Tracy Lesh. His health isn't doing so great right now, so please, I hate to say, thoughts and prayers, but really, if you're, of that persuasion to throw up a little prayer for somebody. Let's hope Tracy gets feeling better real soon. And if you're catching this, Trace, we're all pulling for you, man. Be well.
Let's hope you roll a critical success on your surgery check.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So tomorrow, I'm gonna do some paint clinic. We were talking about painting. I'll get you. I'll send you a care package of a paint starter set and some minis, and you can go nuts with it, Kyle. You can learn the way of the brush. Become a brush ninja. Anyway, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of painting clinic tomorrow. I have a slightly better camera setup to do that now, so you won't see like my shoulder and the side of my head and an out of focus miniature 2 feet away from me. Hell, I don't know what I'm going to do Friday. But then we'll just start all this craziness up again next week. Kyle, you'll be back next Wednesday, yes?
Yep.
Now, anytime, dude, anytime you want to, your co-hosting duties are par excellence, and I always appreciate you being on the stream, so don't feel like I'm just confining you to Wednesdays, and I think if you good folks out there want to see more Kyle, let me know. He can come on. I'll let him say swears. It's fine. I don't give a fuck. So, regardless of what you do, everyone, please have a safe and wonderful rest of your week. And we'll see you all next time on the Crazy Gibberish and Wastrel Wednesdays. Peace out, everyone. Bye-bye. And we're out.